The betting screens flickered across the observation deck of Detention Complex Theta 9, and I watched the odds shift like nervous prey. My name is Vrekk, Senior Warden of this facility, and in my 40 cycles of managing the most dangerous criminals in the Galactic Union, I had never seen anything quite like this. The human child sat in the holding cell, cross-legged on the floor, humming some strange melody that made my auditory receptors itch. He couldn't have been more than 12 standard years old by human reckoning. Small, fragile-looking. The kind of being you'd expect to see clutching a parental unit's appendage, not sitting in a maximum security prison waiting to face the arena of last chances. "This is absurd," muttered Krell, my second in command, his mandibles clicking with agitation. "The child hasn't even reached breeding maturity. The council has lost their collective minds." I couldn't disagree. But protocol was protocol. The human had been caught on surveillance feeds accessing restricted xenobiology files, classified information about every predator species in the known systems. When questioned, he'd simply smiled and said he was doing research, as if that explained anything. The council's verdict had been swift and, frankly, theatrical. If the human wanted to know about predators so badly, they'd decided he could meet one personally. Trial by arena, an ancient tradition that most civilized species had abandoned millennia ago. But the humans were new to the Union, and apparently someone wanted to make an example. The arena itself was a converted cargo bay, 300 meters across, with force field walls that could contain a small nuclear detonation. We'd used it exactly 7 times in my tenure. 3 prisoners had survived. This would be the 8th trial. "What beast did the council select?" I asked, pulling up the manifest on my datapad. Krell's skin shifted to a nervous purple. "A Vrekk slaughter. Cat from Regulus. Prime. 800 kilograms. Razor claws that can shred battle armor. Bite force that can crack starship hull plating." I felt my blood chill. They'd essentially given the child a death sentence wrapped in the pretense of justice. The human, who'd given his name as Tommy, finally stood and stretched. He looked completely unconcerned, which either meant he was in shock or suffering from some kind of cognitive impairment. Through the observation window, I watched him examine his jumpsuit with mild interest, then peer directly at the camera. "Hey!" he called out, waving. "Is there like a bathroom I can use before we start? Also, I'm kinda hungry. You guys have any snacks?" Krell made a choking sound. "He thinks this is a recreational activity." "Humans," I muttered, though truthfully I didn't understand them any better than my subordinate did. They'd arrived in the Union 5 years ago, all smiles and handshakes and bizarre cultural references that made no sense. They ate substances that were mildly toxic to most species and called it spicy food. They kept predators as companions and named them things like Mr. Whiskers. They voluntarily threw themselves out of aircraft for entertainment. The human species, I had concluded, after extensive observation, had a fundamental malfunction in their survival instincts. A message flashed across my console. The council wanted to proceed immediately. No delay. No mercy. The broadcast would go live, across 17 sectors, as a warning about respecting Union security protocols. I activated the communication channel. "Prisoner Tommy, you will be transported to the arena floor in 5 minutes. You have been judged guilty of unauthorized access to classified xenobiological data. Your sentence is trial by combat. If you survive for 1 standard hour, you will be granted clemency and probation. Do you understand?" The child nodded cheerfully. "Yep, got it. 1 hour, don't die. Probably learn some cool stuff about apex predators. Quick question, though, can I ask for some equipment?" This was unexpected. Prisoners were occasionally granted basic defensive gear, though few asked. "State your request. Do you have any honey? And maybe a stick? Oh, and if you've got like a really thick glove, that'd be awesome." Krell and I exchanged bewildered looks. "Honey?" I repeated slowly. You want a food substance and a wooden implement to fight a creature that can tear through reinforced steel? Tommy shrugged. I mean, if you don't have honey, maple syrup works too. But honey's better for this. Against every shred of common sense, I approved the request. What did it matter? The child was doomed anyway. Might as well let him face death with whatever strange comfort items his species required. 10 minutes later, Tommy stood in the center of the arena, holding a titanium rod approximately 1 meter long and wearing a padded glove that extended to his elbow. A small container of honey, imported at ridiculous expense from Earth, sat clipped to his belt. The betting screens showed odds of 8,000 to 1 against his survival. Some enterprising souls were taking bets on how many seconds he'd last. The Vrekk slaughter cat materialized at the far end of the arena, transported directly from its containment unit. It was magnificent and terrifying, all rippling muscle and predatory grace. Its 6 eyes fixed on Tommy immediately, and it released a roar that shook the observation deck's windows. Tommy didn't run. He didn't scream. He sat down, opened the honey container, and dipped the stick into it. "What is he doing?" Krell whispered. "I have absolutely no idea," I admitted. The slaughter cat began its approach, slow and menacing, the way apex predators move when they know their prey has nowhere to go. Tommy raised the honey-covered stick and, bizarrely, began waving it back and forth. Then he started making sounds, strange, clicking, chirping sounds that my translator couldn't process. The slaughter cat paused, head tilting with confusion. Tommy continued his noises, then did something that made my heart skip several beats. He stood up and walked directly toward the predator. "Stop him!" someone shouted from the council observation booth. "The force field prevents external interference," I replied automatically, though my voice sounded distant to my own receptors. I couldn't look away. Tommy got within 5 meters of the slaughter cat and stopped. He knelt down, stuck the honey-coated rod into the ground, and then, impossibly, turned his back on the creature. The slaughter cat crept forward, suspicious but intrigued. It sniffed the honey, then began licking it. Tommy, still with his back turned, started making more of those strange sounds. Soft, rhythmic, almost soothing. "He's vocalizing a non-threat pattern," Krell breathed. "But that's impossible. Slaughter. Cats don't respond to social bonding behaviors. They're solitary ambush predators. They have no pack mentality to exploit." Tommy glanced over his shoulder, then slowly reached into a pocket I hadn't noticed before. He pulled out something small and tossed it gently toward the slaughter cat. It landed a meter from the creature's face. The predator investigated, sniffed, then consumed it in one gulp. Its aggressive posture softened fractionally. "What did he just give it?" I demanded, zooming the camera feed. The analysis came back seconds later. Concentrated protein matrix infused with neurostimulants that triggered pleasure responses. Street name among human populations. Kitty treats. The child had brought treats. For a slaughter, cat, to his own execution. Over the next 20 minutes, Tommy methodically worked his way closer to the creature, using a combination of honey-coated sticks, treats, and those bizarre vocalizations. The slaughter cat, for its part, seemed utterly baffled but increasingly cooperative. Its 6 eyes had gone from predatory slits to something almost resembling curiosity. "This shouldn't be possible," Krell kept repeating. "The neurological pathways aren't compatible." Slaughter. Cats don't form attachments. They don't experience trust. They're efficient killing machines. But Tommy was now sitting less than 2 meters from the beast, talking to it in a calm, steady voice. The translator finally managed to process some of his words. "Yeah, you're a big scary guy, aren't you? But you're probably pretty bored in that cage they keep you in. I get it. Being locked up is the worst. You want some more treats? I've got a whole pocket full. My sister's cat back home loves these things, and I figured, hey, cats are cats, right?" The slaughter cat rumbled, a sound that typically preceded an attack. But its body language suggested something else entirely. It was purring. A creature engineered specifically for gladiatorial combat, with a brain the size of a human fist and instincts honed by 10,000 years of selective breeding for maximum aggression, was purring. Tommy carefully extended his gloved hand. The slaughter cat sniffed it, then bumped its massive head against the child's shoulder. Tommy laughed, and the sound echoed strangely in the silent arena. "Good kitty," he murmured, scratching behind one of the creature's auditory organs. "Who's a good kitty? You are. Yes, you are." The betting screens went haywire, odds recalculating, impossible outcomes being processed. In the council observation booth, I could see figures arguing, gesturing frantically. Then the secondary gate opened. I felt my blood turn to ice. Who authorized that? The answer came immediately over my command unit. Counselor Thress himself. The initial trial was too easy. The human clearly possesses some telepathic advantage. We're introducing a second opponent. That violates every protocol, I shouted back. The trial parameters were set. You can't change them mid-session. We can, and we have. Let's see the human handle a real challenge. The second creature that entered the arena made the slaughter cat look like a domestic pet. It was a Corvan battle beast, 3 meters tall at the shoulder, covered in bony plates that could deflect plasma fire. It had been used in the Wars of Expansion 2 centuries ago, before being declared too dangerous for military deployment. Its tiny brain had exactly 2 settings, dormant and destroy. Someone had very clearly set it to destroy. Tommy looked up as the battle beast thundered across the arena floor, and for the first time, I saw fear on his face. Real, primal terror. He scrambled backward, pressing against the slaughter cat, which had risen to its feet, all 6 eyes locked on the new threat. The battle beast roared, a sound like tectonic plates grinding together, and charged. The slaughter cat moved first. It lunged forward, placing itself between Tommy and the battle beast, then released a challenge roar of its own. The 2 predators collided in a blur of claws and armor plating, and the arena floor cracked beneath them. Tommy was shouting something, but the noise drowned him out. He pulled the titanium rod from the ground and backed toward the arena wall, looking frantically for an escape route that didn't exist. The battle beast threw the slaughter cat aside like a toy, sending it crashing into the force field. Electrical energy crackled across its body, and it slumped, stunned but alive. The battle beast turned its attention back to Tommy. The child raised his pathetic metal stick and screamed something in a human language my translator recognized as profanity. Then something extraordinary happened. A third creature emerged from the unconscious slaughter cat's holding container, which had apparently been left partially open during the transport. It was small, barely a quarter-meter long, with black and white fur and a waddle that would have been comical under different circumstances. I recognized it immediately from the classified files Tommy had accessed. A Terran honey badger, scientific name Mellivora capensis. Threat assessment: absurdly high for its size. Known for attacking creatures 50 times its mass without provocation. Possessed pain tolerance that bordered on supernatural. Banned from import to 7 sectors, after a single specimen shut down an entire spaceport. The humans had a saying about these creatures: honey badger don't care. Apparently, that was accurate. The tiny Earth predator looked at the battle beast, looked at Tommy, then made a decision that defied all logic. It charged. The battle beast, confused by this mouse-sized aggressor, swung one massive paw. The honey badger ducked under it, leaped, and latched onto the battle beast's face. Then it began doing what honey badgers do best, absolutely refusing to let go while simultaneously inflicting maximum damage. The battle beast roared and thrashed, trying to dislodge the furious ball of claws and teeth that had attached itself to its sensory organs. The honey badger responded by biting harder. Tommy stared in shock, then started laughing. Genuine, uncontrolled laughter. "Oh my God! That's Biscuit! They brought Biscuit!" "Who?" Krell asked faintly. "Name's a killing machine, Biscuit." The battle beast slammed itself against the arena wall, trying to crush the honey badger. Biscuit held on, repositioned, and went for the battle beast's eyes. The larger creature's roars became panicked. Tommy ran forward, not away, and began beating the battle beast's legs with his titanium rod. The impacts wouldn't have hurt the armored creature under normal circumstances, but combined with a honey badger eating its face, even a battle beast could be distracted. The slaughter cat recovered from its electrical stunning and rejoined the fight, attacking from the opposite side. Now the battle beast faced 3 opponents. A cat engineered for gladiatorial combat, a human child with minimal weaponry and maximum audacity, and an earth creature that apparently operated on pure spite. The battle beast tried to retreat, but Biscuit had discovered the soft tissue behind its jaw plates. The creature's roars became yelps. Tommy kept striking its legs, specifically targeting the joints, while shouting what I can only describe as encouragement. "That's right! You picked the wrong arena! Nobody messes with earth animals! Biscuit, go for the throat! Mittens, big scary cat friend, hit it from the left!" He'd apparently named the slaughter cat Mittens. The battle beast collapsed, overwhelmed and bleeding from multiple wounds. It wasn't dead, merely subdued, curled into a defensive ball, while Biscuit continued administering what could only be described as a thorough mauling. Tommy finally managed to pull the honey badger off, receiving several scratches for his trouble, and held the squirming creature against his chest. Okay, we won! You can stop now!" Biscuit chittered angrily but settled down when Tommy produced more treats from his seemingly infinite pockets. The arena fell silent except for the battle beast's whimpering and the slaughter cat's satisfied purring. Tommy sat down between both creatures, covered in dirt and blood that wasn't his own, feeding treats to a honey badger while scratching a slaughter cat behind its auditory organs. The timer showed 43 minutes had elapsed. "He has 17 minutes remaining," Krell observed needlessly. The council observation booth had gone dark. No communications, no updates. Just stunned silence. Tommy looked up at the cameras and waved. "So, do I win? Because I think we're all pretty tired, and Biscuit gets cranky if he doesn't get his afternoon nap." I activated my communication channel, searching for words and finding none adequate. "Prisoner Tommy, you have successfully survived the trial parameters. Clemency is granted. You will be transported to medical facilities for examination and then released under probationary supervision." "Cool," Tommy said, standing up. "Can Mittens and Biscuit come with me? I don't think they should go back in their cages. They're good boys." "They are scientifically documented killing machines," I pointed out. "So's my mom when someone wakes her up before her coffee, but we still let her roam free." I had no response to that. The transport field activated, extracting Tommy, Biscuit, and somehow the slaughter cat, which refused to leave the child's side. The battle beast remained in the arena, nursing its wounds and its dignity. As I watched the human child walk down the corridor with a honey badger on his shoulder and a slaughter cat padding along beside him like an oversized puppy, I realized something fundamental about these strange newcomers to our union. They didn't just refuse to acknowledge the natural order of predator and prey. They actively rewrote it through sheer force of personality and pocket treats. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were going to learn this lesson the hard way. I pitied them already. 3 days after the arena incident, I found myself standing outside Detention Complex Theta 9's veterinary wing, reviewing the most bizarre incident report I'd written in 4 decades. My supervisor, High Administrator Kellex, had read it twice, asked if I was experiencing neural degradation, then read it a 3rd time before demanding I present the situation in person. The veterinary wing, normally reserved for containment facility guard animals, and the occasional confiscated exotic creature, now housed what the staff had started calling Tommy's Zoo. I palmed the entry sensor and walked inside. Tommy sat on the floor of the largest enclosure, surrounded by blankets, food containers, and 3 data pads displaying various animal behavior studies. Biscuit the honey badger was curled up in his lap, making small, contented sounds. Mittens, the slaughter cat, whose actual designation was Specimen X771 lay stretched across the floor with its massive head resting on Tommy's foot. A medical drone hovered nearby, monitoring vitals that nobody had expected to remain stable. "Morning, Warden Vrekk," Tommy called out cheerfully, not bothering to stand. Biscuit opened one eye, assessed me as non-threatening, and went back to sleep. "We were just talking about natural habitat enrichment. Did you know Mittens here comes from a planet with triple suns?" No wonder he was so aggressive. The lighting in his cage probably gave him constant headaches. I activated my recording device. High Administrator Kellex wanted documentation. "Tommy, we need to discuss your situation." "Sure thing. Pull up a blanket. Floor's pretty comfortable once you get used to it." I remained standing. Krell entered behind me, carrying a stack of paperwork that kept growing despite our best digitization efforts. He eyed Mittens warily and positioned himself near the exit. "The Council has reviewed your case," I began carefully. "Given the unusual circumstances of your trial, they've decided to commute your sentence to time served plus 300 hours of community service." Tommy brightened. "Oh, that's awesome. What kind of community service?" This was the problematic part. "They want you to work here, in the detention complex, with the animals." Krell made a strangled sound. "Specifically, they want you to apply your apparent talents to the other containment specimens. We have 17 creatures currently held in isolation because they're too dangerous for standard protocols. The Council believes you might be able to, quote, calm them down, end quote." Tommy's eyes went wide with excitement. "You mean I get to work with more animals? That's not punishment. That's amazing. What do you have? Please tell me you've got something from a high-gravity world. I've been reading about Krellian stone crushers, and they sound incredible." I exchanged glances with Krell. "You understand these are apex predators, correct? Creatures that have killed trained handlers. We're not asking you to pet them." "Yeah, but they're not evil," Tommy said, scratching behind Biscuit's ears. The honey badger stretched and yawned, displaying teeth that could shred combat armor. "They're just scared, bored, or in pain. Animals don't attack because they're mean. They attack because they're stressed or defending themselves. Back on Earth, my mom works with animal rehabilitation. She taught me how to read body language and stuff." "Your mother," I said slowly, "rehabilitates dangerous animals?" "Well, mostly dogs that people say are aggressive. But she's worked with bears, wolves, even a cranky alligator once. The trick is understanding what they need and not projecting human emotions onto them." He paused. "Or alien emotions, I guess, in this case." Krell pulled up his datapad. "Your file says your mother is listed as a veterinary behavioral specialist. Your father is a wildlife biologist. Your sister is completing her doctorate in interspecies communication psychology." Tommy nodded. "Yeah, my whole family's kind of obsessed with animals. That's why I was looking at those xenobiology files. I wanted to see if Earth animal training techniques would work on aliens. Guess I should have asked permission first, huh?" The understatement of the cycle. "When the Council catches someone accessing classified files," I explained, "they assume espionage or intent to weaponize the information. They don't typically consider the possibility of academic curiosity from a juvenile." "My bad," Tommy said sheepishly. "In my defense, your security encryption was really easy to crack. You should probably upgrade that." Krell's skin shifted through several colors, settling on an alarmed orange. "You broke our military-grade encryption? I mean, it took like 20 minutes? My sister taught me about quantum key vulnerabilities when I was 9. Your system had a bunch of them." He shrugged. "Anyway, when do I start with the other animals?" I was beginning to understand why the Council had opted for arena combat instead of a conventional trial. Tommy wasn't malicious. He was something potentially more dangerous, incredibly competent, and completely oblivious to normal social boundaries. A perfect human specimen, in other words. "Before we discuss that," I said, pulling up my own datapad, "we need to address the political situation. Your trial was broadcast across 17 sectors. The Vormex Collective is furious that you, quote, humiliated their premier battle creature. 3 betting syndicates are demanding compensation for lost revenue. And someone started a galactic social media campaign, calling for your immediate employment at the Union's xenobiological preserve. Tommy's face fell. Wait, people are mad at Mittens? That's not fair. He was just doing what he was trained to do. It's not his fault the training was awful. They're not mad at Mittens. They're mad at you for making a slaughter cat act like a domestic companion animal. But he's way happier now. Look at him! Tommy gestured to the massive predator, which had rolled onto its back and was making pleased rumbling sounds while Tommy rubbed its armored belly. Back in his cage, his stress hormone levels were off the charts. Now they're normal. I checked with the medical drone. The medical drone beeped confirmation. Mitten's health metrics had improved 67% in 3 days. The issue, Krell interjected, is that you've disrupted several cultural assumptions about predator behavior and dominance hierarchies. Some species have entire religions built around the concept of natural predatory supremacy. Tommy frowned. That's dumb. Nevertheless, it's reality. We have a delegation from the Vrekk collective arriving tomorrow. They want to inspect Mittens and determine if you used some form of mind control. Mind control? I used honey and treats, which they find suspicious. Vrekk culture doesn't have a concept of positive reinforcement training. They use fear-based conditioning exclusively. Tommy's expression hardened, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something that wasn't childlike enthusiasm. That explains so much. The poor guy's been traumatized his whole life. No wonder he was aggressive. Biscuit, sensing Tommy's mood shift, chittered and nuzzled against his hand. The honey badger had been surprisingly gentle since the arena, as if it understood that violence was no longer necessary. There's another complication, I continued. The battle beast you fought, the Corvin specimen, has been refusing food since the encounter. Its handlers say it appears depressed. Well, yeah, Biscuit beat him up pretty bad. That's gotta be embarrassing for a creature that size. Tommy considered this. Can I visit him? Might help if he sees we're not enemies. Absolutely not, Krell said immediately. The Corvin is in maximum containment. It's killed 4 handlers in the past year. Because they were treating it like a weapon instead of a living thing, Tommy countered. Look, I know I'm just a kid, and you guys are experienced in everything, but trust me on this. Animals respond to respect, even the dangerous ones. Especially the dangerous ones. I found myself considering the request, which probably indicated I needed a psychological evaluation. If, and this is purely hypothetical, we were to arrange a supervised observation session, what would you do? Tommy's face lit up. First, I'd watch him from outside the containment field. Study his body language, see what he's communicating. Then I'd try to figure out what he needs. Maybe better food, different temperature, social interaction. Battle beasts are pack animals in the wild, right? He's probably lonely. Krell checked his datapad. According to the xenobiological database, yes. Corvon species typically travel in groups of 5 to 12 individuals. But this specimen was bred in captivity specifically for arena combat. It's never known pack structure. Even worse, Tommy said quietly. Imagine being a social creature raised in total isolation, trained to fight, then punished when you act exactly how they trained you. That's torture. The word hung in the air uncomfortably. I'd never considered our containment procedures through that lens. The creatures were dangerous. We kept them secure. We fed them. What more could we do? Tommy seemed to read my thoughts. I'm not saying you're bad people or anything. You probably have regulations and safety concerns and all that stuff. But regulations were written by beings who might not understand animal psychology. My mom always says the rules should serve the animal's welfare, not the other way around. Before I could respond, an alarm sounded through the facility. My comm unit erupted with urgent messages. Containment, breach in Section 7. Multiple casualties. Requesting immediate response. Krell and I moved simultaneously toward the door. Tommy stood up, carefully depositing Biscuit on the blankets. What's happening? Stay here, I ordered. That's not a request, It's a direct command. We ran. Section 7 housed the facility's most volatile specimens, including a Phrenix acid spitter that could dissolve battle armor in seconds. The corridor leading to the containment wing was scorched and smoking. 2 guards lay unconscious, their armor partially melted. A medical team was already working on them. "Status report," I barked. The shift supervisor, a veteran named Tauth, looked up from his console with 2 of his 4 eyes. The Phrenix broke containment during routine feeding. It's in the ventilation system now. We've sealed the section, but it can move through the ducts. Defensive protocols are active, but those systems aren't designed for an acid-based predator. Krell was already coordinating evacuation procedures. Do we have visual? Intermittent. The acid is destroying our camera feeds as it passes. A scream echoed from deeper in the section. Someone hadn't made it out in time. I grabbed a plasma rifle from the weapons locker and started issuing orders, but my mind was racing through possibilities. The Phrenix was functionally unstoppable in enclosed spaces. Our weapons would only enrage it further. Standard protocol called for venting the entire section into space, but we had personnel trapped inside. "Warden Vrekk!" One of the guards pointed down the corridor. Tommy was running toward us with Mittens and Biscuit flanking him like an honor guard. The slaughter cat's movement was predatory grace. The honey badger moved with determined waddle. Tommy looked absolutely terrified and completely resolved. "I told you to stay in the veterinary wing," I shouted. "Yeah, well, I'm really bad at following orders when people are in danger." He skidded to a stop in front of me. "The thing that escaped, what does it eat?" "What? This isn't the time for questions about diet? Just tell me. What does it eat naturally? Not whatever you've been feeding it here." Tauth pulled up the file with shaking appendages. Phrenix species are ambush predators from high-acidity worlds. They consume metalloid-based organisms and mineral deposits rich in sulfur compounds. Tommy's eyes darted as he processed this. When was the last time it had access to its natural food sources? Never. It was born in captivity. We feed it protein synthesized to match its nutritional requirements. So you've been giving it the equivalent of bland nutrient paste its whole life? Tommy looked horrified. "No wonder it's angry. It's probably starving for proper minerals. Where's your mineral storage?" "Engineering section, 2 levels down. But Tommy, we need to evacuate you before—" The ceiling panel above us exploded. The Phrenix dropped into the corridor, 3 meters of segmented chitin, armor and dripping acid sacs. Its sensory tendrils locked onto Tommy immediately. Time seemed to slow down. I raised my plasma rifle. Krell activated his personal shield. The guards opened fire with suppression bursts that splashed harmlessly off the Phrenix's natural armor. Tommy stepped forward. Not back. Forward. "Everybody stop shooting," he yelled. "You're just making it more defensive. Tommy, get back! Shut up for 1 second and trust me." The Phrenix reared up, preparing to spray acid across the entire corridor. Tommy raised his hands, palms out, and did something that defied every survival instinct. He started singing. Not words, just sounds. Low, rhythmic tones that resonated strangely in the enclosed space. The Phrenix paused, tendrils twitching. Tommy adjusted his pitch, moving through frequencies that made my auditory receptors ache. Then Mittens joined in with a subsonic rumble that vibrated through the floor. Biscuit added high-pitched chittering. Together, they created a soundscape that was alien and somehow hypnotic. The Phrenix lowered its body slightly. Still aggressive, but listening. Tommy slowly reached into his pocket, the same pocket that had produced treats for a slaughter cat and a battle beast. He pulled out a chunk of something that glittered metallically and held it out on his palm. "Where did you get that?" I whispered. "Grabbed it from the geological samples in the veterinary wing. Pretty sure it's sulfur, rich, worth a shot." The Phrenix crept forward, acid dripping from its mandibles. It was close enough to kill Tommy in half a second. 1 spray and the child would dissolve before we could react. Tommy didn't move. He kept singing those strange harmonics. The Phrenix extended 1 segmented limb and delicately plucked the mineral sample from Tommy's hand. It consumed the sample, mandibles working with unexpected precision. Its entire body seemed to shudder, then relax. Tommy reached into his pocket again and produced another sample. The Phrenix took it more confidently this time. "Good," Tommy murmured between tones. "That's what you needed, wasn't it? Real food. Not that synthetic garbage." The Phrenix settled into a crouch, its aggressive posture melting into something almost curious. Tommy carefully sat down in front of it and continued feeding it mineral samples, maintaining that eerie multi-species harmony with Mittens and Biscuit. 20 minutes later, the Phrenix allowed itself to be led back to its containment cell, following Tommy like an enormous, deadly puppy. The child convinced the creature to enter the reinforced enclosure by placing a pile of mineral samples inside, and promising, in that strange singing language, that better food would come regularly. When the containment field activated, sealing the Phrenix inside, Tommy finally allowed himself to collapse. He sat on the floor, shaking with adrenaline crash, while Mittens pressed against his side and Biscuit climbed into his lap. I sat down next to him, my legs no longer able to support my weight. That was the most irresponsible, dangerous, foolish thing I've ever witnessed. "Did it work?" Tommy asked weakly. "Yes." "Then it wasn't foolish, just scary." Krell approached, his skin cycling through colors I'd never seen before. "How did you know the harmonics would work?" "I didn't. But I figured acid, world predators, probably use chemical and auditory communication more than visual, right? So I tried matching what I thought might be calming frequencies based on the research I read. Plus Mittens and Biscuit helped. Animals understand each other better than we give them credit for. The injured guards were being transported to medical. They'd survive, though recovery would take weeks. The personnel trapped deeper in Section 7 had been extracted safely, all because a human child had sung to a monster and offered it proper food. High Administrator Kelix appeared via hologram, his expression unreadable. "Warden Vrekk, report." I gave him the summary, leaving out nothing. When I finished, Kelix was silent for a long moment. "The human child neutralized a Phrenix acid spitter with mineral samples and vocalization?" "Affirmative, sir. I'm reviewing the security footage now. This is—" He trailed off. "Unprecedented." Tommy waved at the hologram. "Hi. Sorry about the containment breach. That was kinda my fault for leaving the veterinary wing." "Actually," Kelix said slowly, "if you hadn't intervened, we would have lost 12 personnel and been forced to vent the entire section. You saved lives." He paused. "How would you like a job?" "I'm 12. Tommy pointed out. "Yes, which violates approximately 47 labor regulations. However, I'm prepared to classify you as a junior xenobiological consultant, operating under special educational exemption. Full facility access, reasonable compensation, and housing for you and your apparent companions." Tommy looked down at Mittens and Biscuit. "Can my family visit? We can arrange that. And can I improve the conditions for all the animals here? Better food, bigger enclosures, environmental enrichment, the whole thing?" Kelix's expression softened. "That's exactly what we're hoping you'll do. The Union Xenobiological Preserve has agreed to fund a complete overhaul of our containment protocols based on your methods. You'll be working with specialists from 17 species. Will they listen to a kid? After today?" "Yes, they'll listen." Tommy nodded slowly, then smiled. "Okay. But I wanted in writing that Mittens and Biscuit are official facility employees too. They did most of the work." "Done." 3 months later, Detention Complex Theta 9 had been completely transformed. The cramped cages were gone, replaced by species-appropriate habitats with proper enrichment. The battle beast, now named Boulder by Tommy, lived in a communal environment with 3 other Corvin specimens rescued from illegal fighting rings. The Phrenix, called Pickle because Tommy thought it was funny, had a sulfur-rich mineral garden and regularly performed acid sculpting displays that had become tourist attractions. Mittens served as a therapy animal for traumatized rescue creatures, using his own recovery as proof that rehabilitation was possible. Biscuit became head of facility security after demonstrating that no intruder, regardless of size or species, could defeat something that simply refused to acknowledge the concept of retreat. Tommy's family had relocated to the station. His mother immediately began implementing her rehabilitation protocols across 6 sectors. His father published groundbreaking research on interspecies behavioral similarities. His sister started a cultural exchange program teaching alien species about Earth animal psychology. I stood on the observation deck, watching Tommy work with a newly arrived Crestian thundersnake, coaxing it out of its shell through patience, proper food, and respect. The betting screens were gone. The arena of last chances had been converted into an educational theater where Tommy gave demonstrations 3 times a week. "Humans," Krell said beside me, echoing my thoughts from months ago. "They really do rewrite the natural order." "Not rewrite," I corrected. "They just refuse to accept that cruelty is natural. They believe kindness is stronger than fear." "Do you think they're right?" I watched Tommy laugh as the thundersnake draped itself across his shoulders. Its previous aggression completely vanished. Mittens and Biscuit watched from nearby, ready to intervene but trusting Tommy's judgment. "I think," I said carefully, "that they're teaching us what we should have known all along. Strength isn't about dominance, it's about understanding." Krell's skin shifted to thoughtful blue. "The Council wants to implement Tommy's protocols throughout the entire Union correctional system. All facilities. All species. Good. It's overdue." On the habitat floor below, Tommy was now sitting with the thundersnake, reading from a datapad about Crestian environmental conditions, planning improvements to its enclosure. The creature's posture had gone from defensive to curious, following the now familiar pattern. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were probably species who would see Tommy's methods as weakness. They would mistake compassion for softness. They would learn otherwise. Because the thing about humans, I'd discovered, was that their kindness came with teeth. They would feed you treats and sing you songs and make your life immeasurably better. But if you threatened something they cared about, you'd find yourself facing down Mittens and Biscuit and the very particular fury of a species that had domesticated wolves and befriended bears. Tommy looked up at the observation window and waved. I waved back, feeling something I hadn't experienced in decades of running maximum security facilities. Hope. The human child had walked into an arena designed for death and walked out with friends. In doing so, he'd changed everything. And he'd done it with honey, treats, and the absolute refusal to accept that cruelty was inevitable. That, I decided, was the most human thing of all.